I would take it a step further and say it's essential actually to make mistakes in order to grow and to be the best version of ourselves as parents. Again, this is where your child comes in, because they're going to show up and they're going to demand of you to be a better version of yourself. You just can't help it.
Welcome to Mothering from Within, the podcast where we dive into the heart of parenting during those magical yet challenging first few years. I'm Kaili Ets, a mama of two, a pediatric occupational therapist, and your guide on this beautiful journey of motherhood. Every week, we explore the wonders and hurdles of motherhood with curiosity, we gain clarity around our babies, and find the courage to trust our instincts. If you are a mama who wants to do motherhood your way, confidently, courageously, authentically, then you are in the right place. So grab a cup of tea, tuck those little ones in for a nap, or bring them along for the ride. It's time to get curious, gain clarity, and unleash your courage to do motherhood your way. A gentle disclaimer, please do not consider anything discussed on this podcast by myself or any guest of the podcast to be medical advice. The information is provided for educational purposes only and does not take the place of your own medical or healthcare provider. I am so excited to have another guest expert here. Her name is Karen McWilliams, and I have known her for a few years, and I just love what she teaches. I love her energy, and I think she is such a blessing in the life of mamas that I am so honored to have her on this podcast today. So welcome, Karen. How are you doing today?
Oh, Kaili, it's so good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited and nervous. Full transparency, I've never done anything like this before. I'm much more of a behind the scenes, keep my head down, do what I do in privacy. So this is a real stretch for me, just even stepping out of my comfort level to do this. But yeah, I'm good. I'm excited.
Amazing. Well, thank you even more for being on here and stretching out of your comfort zone. Can you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, about what you do, how you support moms, and then also I would love, if you feel called, to chat a little bit how you got into this work as well. Oftentimes, I think that our own motherhood journeys and perhaps what we wish we had had during our motherhood journeys, that offers us into our path to supporting mamas. So if you're feeling called to share a little bit about the background, that would be welcome as well.
Yeah, happy to do that. I mean, interesting enough, probably my background story is even longer than what I do, which is long enough. You know, in a CV kind of world, I guess what I would say is that history has been as a birth and postnatal doula for just 20 years now. So in the last several years has really been on supporting people and families who've experienced trauma from their first birth experience. And that sort of ties into sort of how I came to do this work and my own experience with birth first child, and that relationship between how birth journeys, birth experiences can actually have a really profound impact on the early parenting piece. So that sort of link was for me in many, many ways. I've got a background in prenatal yoga and postnatal yoga, both as an instructor and as a facilitator and trainer for prenatal and postnatal yoga. I'm a childbirth educator, although I prefer to refer to myself as someone who delivers childbirth preparation classes versus education. So I've been doing that for about 18 years, and about 2 years after I started doing that, I realized, wow, there's a lot of time and energy and focus spent on preparing for, one day, give or take. So then I created Life with Baby, which is maybe some of the things we're going to be dipping our toes into today, which is a prenatal early parenting prep class about, some of those more realistic expectations of what life is going to be like after baby arrives. An Emerging Mothers program. One of the organizations I work with, the Woman Wellington, a birth trauma health, grief and loss practitioner. My focus is as an IFS, Internal Family Systems Level 1 practitioner. I am engaged in working towards my Level 2 IFS with a specialty focus on couples and couple dynamic and relationship changes as that pertains to new parenting. I'm a mom of two. I've got a 20-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old son. I've got a household of animals.
I love that you shared so much experience with babies and moms and parents, and facilitating that trauma piece, I think, is a huge piece also. I'm so excited for this chat. So let's dive right in. I would love to chat a little bit, I guess, starting off with this idea of the emotional roller coaster of motherhood, and that this emotional roller coaster is sort of something that we're not necessarily prepared for when we enter parenthood. We are so fixated and in preparation for baby and worried about diaper changing and how are we going to feed the baby and where's the baby going to sleep and all these things, but we're not necessarily thinking about this roller coaster of emotions and all the varying emotions that do come up, especially in those first few years. So I would love to dive into whether you have some light to shed on some of that acceptance of the emotions, and this is part of becoming a new parent.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think, when I hear, as I'm listening to you, reflecting on sort of hearing you speak about that, one thing that really strikes me is that there really is so much focus on the doing part of parenting and less about the being part of parenting. And I think that also, the focus is on baby and baby's needs and like the doing of parenting, right? The doing of the things, the diapering and the washing and all of that stuff, and less about the parents and their experience of transitioning from partners to parents, transitioning from, being their individual selves. And I'll use a context. I'll speak as a mother, but I really want to encompass all birthing parents and parents in whatever way they show up as parents. But I think that we're not attuned in society to really think about the transitional component of changing our inner mapping, our inner landscape, our inner system that is so used to being a certain way in the world, and how we approach problem solving or strategizing or managing or timekeeping. Sort of all of these parts that we sort of approach parenting with. And when we become new parents, all of that stuff that we think we need to know about it really just gets thrown out the window. And then we feel like we're failing, or we don't know how to cope, or I don't know who I am anymore. Like, I can run a Fortune 500 company and, manage dozens and dozens and dozens of people and, fly off the handle and make decisions left, right, and center. And then I have this baby who is communicating in a language that I'm not familiar with. And I'm only as old as my newborn. That's something else I'd love to dig into a little bit more. I'm only, as a mom or a dad, I'm only that old. And yet I'm trying to apply all of the strategies and skills that I have from my other experiences in the world to this new experience, this new world, this new role that I'm in. And the self-doubt, the self-deprecation. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my baby? I'm failing. I can't get this right. I'm not enough, and on and on. And for those of you, the new families out there listening, moms, dads, parents, in whatever way you're showing up, if you're relating to this, I just want to say, pardon my language, I sort of didn't really clear this with Kaili, but I'm going to do it anyways. You're right fucking on track, man. Like, that's the deal. Like, that's the reality. And I think we really need to normalize that. And I think tied to that as well as this concept of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And as someone who works in the counseling realm around the concept of a disorder, and I want to be clear, I think that there are times where there's enough, brain chemistry that is changing to a significant degree that we would perhaps need to have additional support with, medications or psychiatry, that kind of thing. But I think a lot of the hormonal changes and identity shifts that occur that bring up periods and moments of anxiety and depression and rage and resentment and frustration and irritability, all of these things really need to be depathologized and talk about as a normal reprocessing, reconfiguration of our system as we're trying to figure out who we are as new parents.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of those emotions also get triggered or more intense because we are not talking about them, because it is somehow taboo and we're not quote unquote good parents if we're feeling these negative emotions.
Yeah, that's right. 100%.
And how can we be feeling these negative emotions when we were so excited and looking forward to this little baby, and now we have this baby in front of us, but there's this disconnect of how can I be so incredibly happy and also so incredibly enraged and frustrated at the same time. And I think this is one of the big pieces of this overwhelm and this stress, because we don't feel like we can talk about these things, right? There's still very much a taboo about talking about these things. So the more we can start to bring this to light and quote unquote normalize it, the less we're going to feel like there's something wrong with us.
I agree. I could not agree more that good mom, bad mom, cycle. But I agree 100% that we need to be talking about this. We need to normalize it. We need to accept all of our parts have a reason for showing up the way they show up. And instead of trying to shove those down, push those down, alienate them, I think it's really important that we just love on all and show compassion and curiosity towards all of the parts that show up, and this idea that we're somehow bad because we have these feelings. Mm-hmm. I see this a lot, especially in particular, I find with folks who've maybe struggled with their infertility, where it's been a really long journey getting pregnant, and they're finally pregnant and everything is, and they're looking forward to it and they're doing all of the quote unquote right things. And then they're still having these feelings and they really don't make space or feel like they have a space to hold some of these harder emotions. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of self-judgment and criticism around that. I shouldn't feel this way. We've wanted this for so long. I shouldn't have these quote unquote negative or bad feelings, right? And there's, and then there's, society really comes in and has a lot to say about mothering in general and what we're supposed to be doing and shoulds. And it's a big old mess.
Social media, not your friend.
No, not at all. Not at all. I always tell folks that I work with, like, please, use social media as a way to connect so you're not feeling so isolated, but please don't use it as a comparison to what you're doing. We're only seeing such a small fraction.
Yeah.
And people are always better than they truly are. I remember I had a conversation with a psychotherapist, and, we talk about this stuff all the time, of course, no names, we just share experiences. And she was saying that she had a client who, she was struggling. She had 2 kids and she was really struggling, and she knew the ins and outs of what the dynamics in the family was. And then she happened to be scrolling through Instagram and saw this client and the posting that she had posted on her IG account. And it was all, in a nutshell, sunshine and rainbows and unicorns. And she remembers looking at it thinking, like, holy crap, I actually know what's going on behind the scenes here, but you would never know that. And I think that we don't actually know what's going on. And sometimes what we need to do is try to make it look like we're coping better than we are.
In the whirlwind of motherhood, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by conflicting advice and societal pressure. But deep down, you know what's best for your baby. I have a free hypnosis meditation that will help you reconnect with that inner wisdom and trust yourself to navigate motherhood with ease. You can download this from the show notes. Any strategies or tips to help parents cope more with the day-to-day emotions? Because I also feel like in one day we can have this roller coaster of feeling really great and then feeling really down. And part of that is hormonal, part of that is a comparison, part of that is this internal expectation that we thought or how we thought we should be. Any strategies besides being kind of aware of them that you find yourself giving to moms or parents in general to sort of have that self-compassion, to just release some of that tension that might come from those emotions?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit hard to say that there's sort of a one, magic fix thing. I would invite everybody to just sort of experience their emotions as a part of themselves, right? So just even differentiating this idea that I'm an anxious mom. That identity. I am an anxious mom. We'll use that as an example. The reality is very likely you're not always anxious. A part of you right now is really anxious about something. And it could be about everything. It could be about a particular thing. And likely there's a part of you that's feeling like, I shouldn't be anxious, or I don't want to be anxious, or there are times where I'm actually feeling kind of confident, but I'm not really sure if I can lean into that confidence. So really just this idea that we are at any given point in time a multiplicity. And so I guess that's part one, is just noticing that maybe there's other things going on than just this one anxious piece. And then get curious about what that anxiety might be trying to tell you, right? So often, especially with hard emotions, anxiety, depression, rage, irritability, frustration, some of those more resentment, some of those more tricky touch point ones that we cycle through, is to just, get curious about why that's there. What's going on? Like, what is me to know? So ask it. Like, okay, so what is anxiety about? Well, I'm really worried, says anxiety. I'm really worried that if you're not paying attention to every single thing your baby does, you might miss something. Okay, what would happen if I missed something? Something bad could happen. What would it mean if something bad could happen? I would be a bad mom. Oh, so there's a lot at stake. If anxiety isn't present, anxiety is trying to tell you, pay attention, otherwise you could be a bad mom, something bad could happen. So in fact, that anxiety has a little bit of positive intention for you. There's a little bit of like protective energy around it. So then it's just a bit of a separation where we start to feel like, oh, there's a good reason anxiety is present. It's healthy to be more attuned, attention, right? And then we start to build a relationship and befriend it and really kind of get in communication with it. And then it's less likely, if we let that anxiety know, I'm present, I'm paying attention to you, it doesn't have to rear its ugly head and try to crush us or overwhelm us. It can let, where it's now aware that, oh, you're paying attention to this thing. I can maybe relax a little bit. And so in these like really kind of brief moments, if we can have that curiosity and the separation from that really big overwhelm, whatever that is, that's a place to start.
Yeah, I love that.
Get resourced. I think most of what's going on in families today is to do this alone. It takes a village to raise a child. And toxic individualism, I think, is really rampant. And I think we really need to resource. So whatever that look like, if it's family, extended family, you have capacity to hire support. Don't try and do this alone. Join a supportive moms group. Get rest and sleep, which feels really counterintuitive when you have a new baby.
I think for most parents, because they want that, they know they need that, but when their baby doesn't sleep, they don't get that. Yeah. And I think that's a big piece too.
Yeah. One thing I will, people can whatever they want to take it, but the fussy baby that only ever wants to be held and snuggled, and I say fussy in quotation marks, is also maybe trying to tell the parent they need to slow down and actually rest and snuggle and cuddle and just Oli with me. And so if we can even look at our babies and our young children as the teacher that they're showing up to, we can really attune and listen to what they're asking for and then deliver that. Oftentimes they're asking for that parent to rest. I can't put my baby down because they keep needing to get picked up. Okay, well, what if we just leaned into that and cuddled and safely snuggled and lay down in a safe way with the baby and get some rest? What is that baby trying to tell you?
I love that. That reframe is so powerful. Yeah, great. Thank you for that little snippet there, that gold nugget. Okay, so I would love to kind of not necessarily switch direction, but I would love to go back to something that you mentioned earlier about this idea that parents are sort of born when their first child is born. And this concept of we really are like newborns ourselves as parents, just right alongside our baby. But let's dive a little deeper into that.
When I run the Emerging Mothers program, this sort of supportive group for new moms, I'll go around the group and I'll ask, when were you born? And I'm always interested to know, the moms are like, look at me, why do you need my birth date? And I'm not necessarily asking them for when they were born into the world as human beings from their own mothers, right? I'm asking when their babies were born, right? So we were born May 30th, 2023. How does that even land in your system to say, oh, I was born the same time that my baby was born? So I use that as a bit of a jumping off point to help really situate new parents who are struggling with trying to figure out what it is to do, right? And again, it kind of comes back to this idea that we're trying to meet our baby's needs with these previous skill set that we use in other relationships or in work or our other family members. And really, when we have a baby, it's all new skills that we're trying to develop. And so if we can accept that we're only as old as our first baby, then that perhaps, I hope, it cracks open some space of grace to fumble through this new existence together and learn together. And even maybe let your baby be that teacher for you to help teach you about being a new parent. As opposed to parents coming in feeling like they have to know everything. And if they don't know everything, there's something wrong with them. In my group classes, I'll go through a little exercise where I'll ask, how long have you been in the work that you do? You feel really confident in the work that you do? And we'll go around and I've been doing my job for 8 years, blah, blah, confident in what you're doing. 2 to 3 years, learning at the same time. Yeah. And then I come back and I go, so you either went to school and or had a mentor or a manager or somebody to also help you along the way. Yes, of course. So why do we put so much pressure on ourselves when we have this new job as parents to expect to know everything right out of the gate? When we're hormonal, when we're overtired, when we're overwhelmed, when we're just trying to learn all of this stuff. And so in that moment, I can almost feel a collective sigh, like a collective letting go of the pressure to know it all at once. And you're a parent. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't ever know everything. We just get much better at accepting the fact that we don't know everything. And we get much better at just rolling with things as they come up. And as we grow and our children grow, we grow into ourselves as well. And I think that's a real big miss in society. There's a real gap in that understanding.
Yes, there's a huge gap. And I think that our society, how it's set up right now, is still so focused on checking things off the checklist, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And this is not on the checklist.
That's right.
So it gets missed. It gets missed way too much. It doesn't get talked about. It doesn't even get thought about. And so this is where that bringing awareness comes into play. I hope that anybody who's listening right now just also had that big sigh of release of, is your permission to take that pressure off and to just be and to accept where you are. Because the other piece of this is we give our babies and our toddlers and our children so much compassion as they're learning new skills, right? And we don't ever put any kind of pressure on them to be, well, maybe some people do, but to be, sitting by a certain time or walking or, oh my gosh, you should be eating the steak by a certain age or whatnot. And I think that we don't give that same compassion to ourselves and that same allowance of practicing. And as humans, that's how we learn. We need to practice and fail and then regroup and try a different way and fail again. And then we're just constantly learning, constantly making mistakes. And that's where the learning comes from. And I think we don't give that compassion and that allowance for ourselves to quote unquote fail. I know people, that's probably a very triggering word in and of itself, but we're human. As moms, or as parents in general, we like to think that we're, some kind of superheroes, and we are in the eyes of our children, but really we are just human. And we all make mistakes and we don't have it perfect, and that's okay.
Oh God, I can't agree more, Kaili. I mean, we're on the same page for sure. And I would take it a step further and say it's essential actually to make mistakes in order to grow and to be the best version of ourselves as parents. Again, this is where your child comes in, because they're going to show up and they're going to demand of you to be a better version of yourself. You just can't help it. So there's just so much around that self-compassion piece and giving yourself that grace to learn and grow and make the mistakes. And that's where wisdom comes from and growth comes from. And I think when we're doing that as well, we also have to remember, what are we teaching our kids in those moments that we're having these struggles? We're also, embodying, modeling mistake-making being okay. And having self-compassion for ourselves shows children that they can have compassion for themselves when they make mistakes. Right? And so we're really, really, parenting our own selves while we're parenting our kids. And I think that's what has the potential to be so much beauty. And again, I think that we're just really, society just is not, as you say, there's just too many boxes to check. There's all the right things to do and the things not to do, and so many restrictions on one right and wrong, and it can be really, really stressful. I think the other piece that I really want people can lean into is really checking in with their own system and checking their guts around stuff, because, well, I don't know how you feel about this, but I know in the course of my career, my mind gets blown so many times over the things that I hear, quote unquote, professionals tell parents about what their baby should or should not.
On a daily basis.
I need to take a big deep breath here, because I can feel my whole system just activating, starting to go into like reverb as I think about some of the things that I hear. And it just is such damage and such a disservice, especially when an instinctual response to something, and that feels so disconnected from what a professional is telling them.
Yeah, and that's such an important piece, is tuning into what feels right for yourself, what feels right for your family.
Yeah, that's right.
And having the courage to trust that and to advocate for that thing that you're feeling needs to be done, or
that's right.
Advocate even for the fact that it might be something different than what your healthcare professional is telling you. Okay, just a few quote unquote rapid fire questions. Don't feel pressured to answer them super quickly. You're allowed to think about them. So the first one is, what is your favorite way to prioritize taking care of yourself during the day or the week?
What is my personal favorite way of taking care of myself, to prioritize myself during the day or the week? Whew. I think the one that I struggled with a lot as a new mom was the kind of full circle back to where I started, this idea of doing versus being. And so giving grace to those moments where when you are present, be in the moment and not always have to do. Allowing yourself time to slow down and let go of the things that we think we should be doing, and just be. And sometimes rest is the most productive thing you can do. And I'm not even talking sleep, but I'm just talking resting is some of the most productive work you can do in replenishing. Yoga Nidra is a beautiful tool for this. It's about no more than about a 20-minute kind of deep guided meditation that takes you just deep into a restorative restful place without being into a sleep state, which we can feel kind of groggy coming out of. But it really just helps get us into a deeply restorative, restful place that is as nourishing as a 2-hour nap, but it's short. And those are really beautiful for new parents to do, yeah.
I love this. Okay, next question. What is one unique or fun thing about you?
Unique or fun thing about me? I've just discovered stand-up paddleboarding.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, enjoy that. And I think the other unique event, 11.5 years in the Yukon, living off grid. I hold that near and dear. And then I spent some time in Tanzania at a couple of rural birth clinics, learning some really cool stuff from traditional midwives and nurse midwives out in Tanzania.
Wow, I love that. That's cool. Okay. If you had a magic wand, what would you use it for and why?
I would want everyone to have one thing. Holy smokes. It's a toss-up between self-compassion, every human being having self-compassion and healing and grace for themselves, including myself. I'm definitely not there. That is, if my therapist is listening in, she's got to know that it's a lifelong journey. And resourcing, whatever resourcing looks like for you, to have that resourcing. And I'm thinking globally, right? Like I'm myself into some of the things that are happening globally in the world. The resourcing and healing and trauma repair is so critical for world leaders as it filters down to their citizens.
Amazing. Well, thank you again so much for being here. And if you want to just let listeners where they can learn more about you, where they can find you, and if you have any offers or anything, you're welcome to share those right now as well.
I'm not a huge social media presence. I am at transitionings _ is my IG. Transitionings Prenatal and Postpartum Wellness is my Facebook. I'm not really active on there because it's just not my game. My website is transitionings.ca. And I have birth prep classes coming up and life with baby classes coming up. They're both in person in Burlington. It's live virtual, the emerging mothers of womb.ca. And I do in person as well as virtual counseling in Hamilton and Burlington. I was going to say, Hamilton location for, as you know, the womb.ca in Burlington.
I love it. Thank you so much. And I will put all of those links also. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was lovely chatting with you, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us today on Mothering from Within. If today's chat sparked something inside of you to explore your motherhood journey deeper, the Mothering from Within Collective is waiting with open arms. This program offers an intimate, high-touch coaching journey designed to empower you with the confidence and clarity to embrace motherhood on your terms, free from guilt. Get curious about your parenting values, gain clarity on your baby's sleep, development, and more, with comprehensive courses, one-to-one support, group Q&As, and a nurturing community. This is your invitation to join a community of mamas doing it all their own way. Supported, seen, and held. Visit the link in the show notes to learn more about the collective and how we can walk this beautiful path together. Until next time, stay curious, embrace clarity, and let your courage shine.